This is Illuminate, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to Illuminate. I'm your host, Chris Tidrick, and I'm here with Bobby Kalinowsky. Bobby is the co-founder of the Emergeré, a nonprofit with a bold mission to transform the way people connect, grow, and heal. Bobby is the creator of Good Grief Men and an advocate for healthy male emotional connection. Bobby, so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. I found you on Threads, I think prior to even launching this, and just everything you were saying just resonated with my heart so much. I'm thrilled to be on your guest list here. Thank you so much.
Great. Really looking forward to this conversation. I start all of our conversations here on Illuminate with talking about motivation. So tell me a little bit about your why. Where do you find purpose and what drives you?
So I'm married a second time now. My first marriage, like many first marriages, did not go as planned. Right, happily ever after did not make it. I married, she's a wonderful woman in Virginia, where I lived for 24 years. I spent my first 24 in the Philly area. I'm a Philly kid. Moved down to Virginia when I was 24. Got married down here. Had 3 kids. But in the middle of marriage and mortgage and 3 kids, and really high pressure jobs in a really, I would say, expensive place to live. Working as a defense contractor and operations, life was pretty stressful. I had 3 kids under 3 at one point.
Wow.
And in a lot of ways, I did not feel like I was making ends meet. Financially, it was a strain every month. Meeting the needs. When you're working in operations in support of military type activities, you're gone a lot. You're going a lot odd hours of the day, right?
Yeah.
12. Hey, we said we work half days. It's 12 hours, right? So and here's my poor wife with 3 young kids at home, and you hear about it when you come home. Like you're not here. You're not helping. I'm not getting enough help, and it was a constant theme in my mind. Hearing about it on a regular basis, and I knew I'm not doing enough to help here. I'm not making the connection with her that I need. I'm not being the father I can be for my kids. And what ended up happening was I started internalizing that messaging. It's something that's just I'm not good enough. I'm failing as a father. I'm failing as a husband. I'm failing as a family provider. I'm not being what my family needs from me. And that message, one thing I've learned about myself over time is internalizing that message. I will spiral downward really quickly, and I'm sure a lot of men go through some. You start believing your own self-talk, right, good or
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And there we were, and so it led me into a deep depression. That led me into isolation, right? One of the things you do when you're depressed is you start isolating yourself, right? So cut off friends, cut off family. Not because I had a reason to, other than I just my priorities, right? I have to focus on these other things. I don't have time to do anything that's joyful for me, especially when my wife's complaining I'm not there enough, I'm not doing it. So things that were really about me took a back seat. And being in the depths of that depression, getting to the place where one considers whether or not they really even need to exist in this world. We can leave it at that, but it's that kind of place. I don't want to see other men get there, right? Men, for me, don't have the kind of connection that we need to have that checks and balances, right? Somebody in your life
Right.
going, man, what's going on with you? Like, talk it out.
Yeah.
Like give me the deep talk. Like, are you okay? And I lived in that depression, I'd say 7 years, right? Acutely, until I got into a place where I was finally ready to get therapy. But it took starting to unpack that in therapy to really get me to that bottom point, until I realized how bad it was and how much I wasn't getting that need done. My why from all of that is, you know, look for men in these places. Make sure men know they're loved, they're cared about. They don't have to be Superman. They don't have to be a hero. They just have to be there. They have to do their best, and even communicate. I'm doing what I can, right? And be
Yeah.
okay with that. Be okay with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have enough.
Some days showing up is just enough, right?
And
Yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And maybe it's even managing expectations in the relationship. One thing that I noted was I cut off communication with my wife. I stopped talking to her. I stopped. The narrative was so negative in my head about what she was saying and what I perceived that she believed about me, that I stopped the conversation. And at that point, it's not a marriage, right? It's
Yeah.
you've lost that connection. And so to me, let's make sure men have the support system around them they need. It's pervasive in society right now. You look around, and I mean, how many of us, Gen Xers in America were told growing up it's not okay to cry, right? You're
Yeah.
not allowed to have feelings and emotions. Rub the dirt on it and get back out there, right? And so we don't know how to process. We don't even know how to process what we're feeling, and it's high time we stop that.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminded me. I when I was in college, and I'm a fellow Gen Xer, and when I was in college, I was a big fan of The Cure,
Yeah,
and I had a huge like wall size poster of Robert Smith that said "Boys Don't Cry,"
boys
right?
don't cry.
Right, and
That's
so
right.
I don't know that I sort of internalized that message back then,
Mhm.
but that maybe the fact that that song resonated with me
Yeah,
was a sign that I had internalized that
yeah,
message.
for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it's
Yeah.
well, there's visual noise, and so I
Yeah.
mean, as cool as that band was, as good as the songs
Yeah.
were they put out, that's in your face every day, right?
Right.
Those
Yeah.
words are printed on your wall. You're waking up looking at it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your journey and sort of how
Mhm.
how you came to this why. You've given a kind of a high level
Yeah.
overview, but
Yeah.
what were the kind of those pivotal moments for you?
Well, you get to a point where, like I said, you're questioning yourself. People finally started to reach in, right? They were other good friends of mine. So my friend community at the time, it was people from work, other parents that had kids in the same place as my kids were, right? So I ran a neighborhood swim team. I had a really good friend in the neighborhood who also ran that team with me. She was on that board with me, and she reached in. She goes, I don't are you okay? Like, it's literally the kind of conversation I would have
Yeah.
wanted from anyone at that point. But she's the one that finally, convinced me maybe you need, like, go talk to somebody about this. So the path was understanding where I wasn't getting things right in my marriage, understanding I had to try to rebuild that connection to my wife. I was unable to really do that to the degree I wanted to. And I realized the longer I stayed in the relationship, the worse I was going to be emotionally. So unfortunately, we had the divorce, right? And that's, at the time, it was the right choice. You look back on things after they happen, you go, yeah, there's probably things I could have done better and differently at the time, but
Yeah.
I went down the path I went. We divorced. She ended up remarrying. I stayed uh, single, but in another relationship for several years. And that relationship, it was safe. It was good. It wasn't growing me as a
Yeah.
person. And so the pandemic hits, and at that point, you want to talk about needing connection with people. I
Yeah.
ended up in a place where, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Clubhouse app, but I found Clubhouse in early 2021, I want to say, and immediately got on that app. Audio, social media, like conversations about everything, really deep connections, and it was global. So your profile was just words of a static picture of yourself, but it was a real names kind of platform, and you could meet people from all over the world talking about any subject. And I got into that platform really to just learn what else was going on in the world. Where were the people at? Found myself in rooms about things that I was having, personal issues with, like abusive relationships and imposter syndrome. Just fascinating topics. Ended up meeting someone in one of these rooms that had a similar sort of mission in mind for life that I wanted. Like, how do you get people out of these situations where they feel like there's this negative self-talk, there's negative,
Yeah.
like abusive types of things. She was someone that was a single mom of five. She was basically had fled physical abuse in her marriage, and
Mm.
so she's raising kids on her own. She was married to a St. Louis County cop, right? So right around the Ferguson, Missouri time, he's got his own stress going on. Here's another guy that can't
Yeah.
talk, can't communicate. And so we both had the sort of vision to start a nonprofit to try to, help people connect to local resources. What could we build locally to try to mesh a network of resources together for people that didn't know how to find them? One thing led to another. I ended up moving out to St. Louis from Virginia, and I've been there for about 3 years now. Building a life there. The timing wasn't ideal. I still had three kids in high school when I did this, which that was
Yeah.
that was sort of hard timing, but I felt like it was a calling at the time. I had to go. And so back and forth, I spent 2 years on the road, 1 week in Virginia, 1 week in St. Louis.
That's a
Was
long haul.
It was a long haul. It was
Yeah.
12 and a half hour drives. I bought myself a nice Toyota GR86. If I'm going to be on I-70 that much, I better enjoy the trip.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I had an apartment. At one point, I started to fly back and forth. I had an apartment and a car in both places, and was literally splitting time. It was crazy. I don't recommend that lifestyle.
Yeah,
Um,
I had a relationship in between my first marriage and my second marriage that
yeah,
was she was in Columbus and I'm in
yeah.
Champaign, Illinois,
Okay,
and
yeah,
so
right.
it's I-70. It's a
I-70, right?
5 hour drive. I know a section of your drive very
Yes.
well. Yeah,
Yeah, at one point could map all the Starbucks on not to promo them, but all the Starbucks on I-70. I know right where
yeah,
they were. Right? Like because
yeah,
12 and a half hours, you need that boost. But yeah, I mean, every week I was either flying back and forth or driving back and forth. And why? Because I still want to be a good dad. I still want to be there for the kids,
yeah,
but they're living with mom. Um, Again, single men isolation. I am not with my kids all the time, right? I tried to be present for them in sports once they get to high school. They arguably need that around more. But there was a whole lot of time where they had their own life. They started working jobs. I wasn't as needed in my mind, right? And so I wanted to still be there when I had my opportunities, but at some level in my mind, I felt like, all right, well, maybe now's a good time to start transitioning. I know I'm not going to stay in Virginia forever. It's fundamentally not my place. And St. Louis felt like somewhere that was just pulling me in, right?
yeah.
So off I went, and did that back and forth for 2 years. The youngest finally went to college back in August here, and so I'm now full time Missourian, and trying to make a difference out there, yeah, in much the same way. But that's when we found Threads. We had the whole presidential administration change, and all those things have sort of disrupted things quite a bit. But for me, it became a time to start. Let's. What can we do? We can start the conversation. Right? We can start to get things going.
Yeah, that's I think similar in some ways to the reason why I started this podcast. I woke up, in all honesty, I woke up the day after election day in kind of despair. Like what just happened
How did this happen? What
and
happened? Right,
and
we're still
and,
figuring it out.
and what can I do about it? And it was I realized that, I could just sit there and scream on social media, but that doesn't do a whole lot of good, right? Even on a place like Threads where we met, and
Hmm.
this, which is a kind of the most affirming social media that I know
Yeah.
of. Although I think your stories about Clubhouse, I was not on social media. I quit social media in 2017 and
Mhm.
just got back on last summer.
Gotcha.
So I missed the whole Clubhouse thing.
Yeah, well,
I think I would have liked it a lot.
it
It's
was
right up my
Chris. It was
alley. Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
For there was a spark of time, and not to promote that either, but
yeah,
there was about a 6 month period where it was, if you're familiar with the hype cycle idea, right?
yeah,
It was climbing in hype. It had all this potential. They limited the user base, and so it was really just these, you know, people just globally, but from incredible backgrounds with lots of experience. You could hear a conversation about anything, and what would happen was you'd get engrossed in this discussion. You'd actually learn. They were so
yeah,
elevated conversations, and you could talk to anybody about anything, no filter. And the more users, of course, it waters it down. And I don't think it is what it used to be. Personal opinion, but and I haven't been on it quite a bit. But during that period of time, I sort of recognized at some point we're going to hit that peak of inflated expectations and it's going to crash. I better
yeah.
solidify the relationships I found here before it crashes. And people
Right.
sort of,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. We all went back to work and boom, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
you'd have had fun though. You'd have had fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad you had that during the pandemic years because it was a tough time for so many people. And if you're already somebody who doesn't connect well, that just shut down every avenue that
That
people
did.
had.
That did. And the thing with men, we're not taught to socialize that way. So for me,
Yeah.
that was almost an awakening for me, and that was a very valuable part of my journey because I tuned into that platform afraid to talk to people. I didn't know, like, if I say something, somebody's going to get angry with my opinion. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to get angry with what I have to say. And it took me a month of listening to conversations. The first conversation I actually joined, it was in a group called Black University, and they were talking about the racist experiences that all of us had. And raised my hand and got on the virtual stage. And you could tell, like, there weren't looks because it's an audio platform, but people were like, what is this guy? Like, all right, the reception I got the first time I tried to speak on this platform was, well, Bobby, what would you like to say in this room?
Yeah.
But after having listened to it, my response was just thank you. I've been listening for a month. Thank you. Please keep talking. Please keep educating. This is a journey for us, but I've learned so much.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the important part. I've been listening. I'm understanding. I'm seeing it in myself. I didn't think it was there. It's there. I'm learning. Please keep going. I appreciate you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So much I think that men are
Mhm.
like, we feel like we have to be the ones speaking all the time, and we're not the greatest listeners in the world. And we speak without connecting. It's the weirdest thing. Like,
Yeah.
but it's good on you for like having that awareness that I can just listen here and I can learn and listen to other people's wisdom for a while.
Well, and admittedly, it was intimidation. Like I was afraid to actually say something, but when I
Yeah.
finally said, like, okay, I didn't get beat up.
Yeah.
I was actually thanked for saying something and not
Yeah.
overstepping. And so that was step one, right? But then eventually you start hosting conversation, right? You start to realize, hey, I do have something to say here. My opinions matter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get yelled at for having an opinion, which triggered that was my mother word, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
that began my own deconstruction into how do I get unstuck in life? How do I start to
Yeah.
move into the person I want to be as a man? Is to deconstruct those labels and fears and things.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit. One of the
Sure,
themes that's one of the themes of this podcast is personal growth. And in my mind, personal growth almost always requires deconstruction of some sort. It's like there's something that we're holding on to, there's something we learned,
yeah,
and we have to let go of some of it in order to grow. So
sure.
what are those things that kind of were foundational to you previously that you've had to knock down a little bit in order to get to a new space?
Well, back in the Depression, the foundational deconstruction was, I've gotten to such a negative place. First, my actual the trigger for the depression was I went to my church. I was Catholic. I got married in the Catholic church. I went to the church and said, "Hey, like I need help. Right? I'm failing in this marriage." The response I got at the time, and I can look back and I know why they gave me this advice. The advice was, "You need to pray together." And so I said, "Well, I've tried to get my wife to pray with me. She does not want to do this. She's not there with me right now." And they said, "Well, then you need to pray alone." This, and I
Hmm.
actually got angry. I got angry with them. I said, you told me when I got married that if there were ever issues, you'd be here to help. This is the advice you're giving me, and I walked away from it in disgust. And so I began to actually deconstruct religion. Right?
Hmm.
What have I been spoon fed about? And who are these people that thought they could help me and didn't? Right? And so I was angry about that. I then started to deconstruct health. I started to deconstruct the foods I was eating, where they were coming from. Like I went down every rabbit hole you could think of, every conspiracy theory you could think of.
Yeah.
Like everything you get into these really dark places. More recently, having re-rationalized a lot of those things, what I've been working on over the last 3 or 4 years, right, since this sort of clubhouse experience tripped me a bit, is understanding the heterosexual American white man, right? So a really hard place to be right now. You as a man in that spot, you can take that and go, everyone hates me, right? I am the target for
Hmm.
every feminist. I'm the target of every racist. That like everyone looks at who I am in my 50s. I'm American. I'm a white man, and I'm in a fairly well paying job, right? I'm the problem, right? And so I could take on that negativity, but let's not do that. Let's think about why people feel the way they feel and how much of those labels, this is really the key. How many of those labels have I internalized? And how have I been treating people and treating myself as a result? Right. And so one of the exercises, and my nonprofit partner actually put me on to this. This is one of the wisest things people have ever said to me. Write down a list of all the labels you've ever put on yourself, all the things you've ever believed about yourself, write them all down. Things people have said to you that you've internalized and owned. Then ask yourself, why did you own it? Why did you make that about you? And so for me, there were a lot of things, right? I wasn't good enough for my dad to show up and do things with. I'm not worthy of his love. I wasn't good enough for my mother. I wasn't good enough at sports for my coaches. Right? Like you start there, like
Yeah.
start way back, and then all those things, all the things my wife had said to me that I internalized and made grief of my own. You really sit down and think about: do I truly believe that about myself? Do I really own that? Because that's someone else's view. They've
Right.
projected into
Yeah.
me. Why did I decide to internalize that and make it my own view of myself? And do I actually believe it? Right. And if I don't, why do I think they felt that way about me? There might be something in me that triggered something in them. So I do have to own that there's something in there.
Yeah.
What is it? And so you get to this place where you have to face your own monster, right? We
Hmm.
all have a monster inside, right?
Yeah.
Every single one of us. There's truth in what they've said about me, but I have to know why they said it. And I have to understand myself well enough to know it's in there. I have control of it. I accept that that's there. I'm not going to hide it anymore. Right
Yeah.
there's parts of it. I wasn't a great dad. I wasn't a great husband. The more you start to deconstruct those things, the less anger you have toward the people that said it. They saw something
Yeah.
in me I wasn't willing to accept about myself. Right. And so, okay, I have not done well by my ex-wife. I can let go her anger toward me and
Okay.
acknowledge her. No, I didn't do all I could have for you. Right. To my kids. No, I maybe shouldn't have moved to
Yeah.
Missouri 2 years ago. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. But that doesn't mean you're not my kids and you're not still important. That will always show up. Right. But I'm impulsive. I did something that felt right at the time, and I recognize that hurt you. Right.
Yeah.
It's owning the labels, Chris. That's seriously what it is.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, and I've got a phrase that I've used in a variety of different arenas. That's if life keeps biting you in the ass, make sure you don't have bacon in your back pocket.
Don't let me
Um,
keep chasing you. Right.
right, and it's one of those things where like not everything everybody says about you is true,
Mhm.
but you have to examine to see, is there a kernel of truth in what they're saying? And
Yes.
is there something you can do about that to change yourself? Right.
Right.
And if there
That's right.
isn't, right, if you do that self examination and you're like, you know what, they're full of crap, right?
Always an outcome.
Then just
Yep.
walk away from it.
Yeah.
But doing that introspection and going, is there something about me that is triggering this response in them?
Mhm.
And, maybe I'll change it, maybe I won't, but I'll know that that's what the thing is, right?
Yeah.
Identifying the thing is so important.
True. And that is a good clarification. Not everything everyone says about you is true. That is 100%. Thank you
Yeah.
for the clarification and correction there.
Yeah.
You do have to reject the labels that you don't fully, truly own or believe about yourself. But if you feel a twinge of something about it, it's worth going after. Like, don't ignore it. Dive into it. Understand it. And be real with yourself. You don't have to admit it to other people right away. Be
Yeah.
real with yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
feedback is a
Mhm.
gift, but sometimes
It is.
it's the ugly sweater from your Aunt Clara, right?
The
And
bunny outfit.
yeah, yeah, and you don't need to keep it, right? You don't need to wear it all. You don't need to
That's right.
wear that feedback all the time.
No.
Um,
but
so
but own that it's in there sometimes,
yeah,
right? Like so and this is what Nicole, my nonprofit partner, what she'd said to me is people will trust you more if you know your dark side, your
mm,
darkness, and if you own it.
yep,
Because if you own it, they can feel safe around you because you know yourself. And there's not the monster isn't a monster because it's something you readily have admitted to yourself
yep,
about yourself. Whether you want to tell them or not, at least you know what's in there. You know
yes.
what you're capable of.
Two of the quadrants of emotional intelligence are self
Mhm.
awareness and self management,
You got it.
right? That's
You got
that's
it.
it, right?
Yeah. And if
Um,
you don't acknowledge the dark, you're not
Yeah.
aware, right?
Yes. So let me ask you. You mentioned you were raised Catholic, and
Mhm.
we're Catholic. So was I.
Awesome.
I ended up leaving the Catholic Church after college. I went to a Catholic college and ended up leaving the church in the sort of in the middle of that. But the straw that broke the camel's back was I was planning to get married right after graduation from undergrad to my
Yeah.
first wife. She wasn't Catholic, and so we weren't going to get married in the Catholic Church. And my grandfather sent a letter to my entire family and said, "Don't go to that wedding."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
as you were sort of describing some of your experiences, like the word that kept popping out to me was shame, right? And
That's the key.
you didn't even use the word shame, and
Didn't use it.
the number of
Mhm.
people I've had several other guests that have been raised Catholic on this just out of coincidence, and like they all come back to that that shame feeling. And I
Yeah.
think there's something about that
Yes.
particular religious culture that just it uses shame as a weapon. And that's something that I think a lot of us as men have to, men who are raised in that particular faith, have to deconstruct in ourselves.
We do. And shame is really the key. I think that's the key to a lot of this. Getting back to the darkness part, where how do you know what those labels are? What do you feel shame about? Right now, to your point about Catholicism, I used to be angry at them for this as well. But you're right. Shame is used. I think it's well intended. I think they're trying to get people to acknowledge the shame within themselves. They call it sin, right? Acknowledge the shame. But I think the way it's pointed out at certain groups' lifestyles, the way it's pointed out to the way you should live your life, and the
Yeah.
way to me it was so overly prescriptive, and I think it misses the mark of the basic core of just be kind, right? You're
Yeah.
missing the kindness. You're
Yeah.
missing the opportunity to connect to other people and understand their experiences. If you're ostracizing people, how is that anything that the being that you're worshiping would accept? Like
There's
to me, that
got
was just
there's
yeah,
got to be some better way of motivating people to be good,
yeah,
right?
that's
If
right.
you're relying on shame to make people good, there's just
Mm.
something very mixed up about that.
It's a tool to help you find the things you need to work on. It shouldn't be a lifestyle. It should
Yeah,
not be a way of life. I
exactly.
should not
Yeah.
celebrate it one day a week, right?
Yeah, and like guilt is that, in my mind, guilt is the positive feeling that motivates you to do better,
Right.
right? Guilt is about the thing you did. Shame is
Yeah.
about who you are. And
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 that
what you're hiding. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
What you're not
exactly.
willing to admit.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me, you talked about some things that you've deconstructed in the past. What are the personal development things that you're currently working on? We're all works in progress.
It's reminding myself not to get back there, right? So you can the funny is I think you're getting this work. The work on yourself doesn't end, right? We're always works in progress. I swore leaving the first marriage I'd never get remarried. The thing I'm least proud about from the relationship I had in the middle was I told her from day one I don't intend to get remarried, right? And I broke that relationship off. Missouri wasn't in her plans, and I got remarried out in Missouri, and I sort of I don't feel bad for I married the most perfect person for myself. That relationship, it's funny how we always attract our mirror, right? That relationship, we
Right.
trigger in each other things that still haven't been worked on, right? So
Yeah.
to me, it's every day in my new marriage is an opportunity to connect deeper with my wife, to understand who
Yeah.
she is as a person, to understand myself better. We have daily conversations about ways that I need to understand her better, about things she can understand about me better. So it's really continuing to work on how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic, how to be supportive as a partner with someone else, because that's the part I didn't do in my first marriage. And arguably in that intermediate relationship, we were more friends and roommates that happened to be in a relationship, but there was some level of keeping at arm's length, right? And so I'm learning at 51 in my second marriage how to allow someone in even when it's messy,
Yeah.
right? And
I
so that,
I hear you. I'm 53 in a very similar spot. So
so
yeah.
that's where I'm working
Yeah.
every day. I still get the reflection back of here's how you can be a better partner today, right?
Yeah,
And I
that's
willingly want it.
yeah, I really like the metaphor of the mirror, because the mirror is healthy when it's reflecting an inspirational view back to you, right?
Yeah,
It's that you can be better.
sure.
When it's reflecting shame back, it's unhealthy. And so that's the having the right partner to do that.
Yeah,
Is your partner is always going to be a mirror.
yeah,
The type of mirror you get, I think, is the thing that makes a successful relationship.
absolutely.
One of the things we talk about here is this idea of open mind. It's in the tagline of the podcast. One of the things that I find that I need to keep my mind open is continuously learning. So how do
Yeah.
you do that for yourself? Like, what are your go
Well,
tos for learning?
incidentally, we mentioned I drove 12 and a half hours. Audiobooks were my friend.
Yeah,
And I did a lot of learning by listening to audiobooks, streaming podcasts. There was a lot of time to kill on the highway. So for me, there's always a cue. There's always something else to listen to. There's always and it's not just about personal development or growth. It's about, other interests, things that I put aside in that first marriage where I said I sort of lost
Yeah.
my own interests and things, right? So catching up on things that are interesting to me, learning more about how to dig into myself through audiobooks. More recently, especially in the last couple of months, and I'm trying not to do it 2 months, 10 minutes a day of news
Hmm.
will sort of guide me to the issues. What are we talking about today? What is it that I need to learn more about, right? And so that will sort of guide me to the next audiobook to listen to. I'm 51. I'm a little bit of a poor reader in a sense that I can't focus very long looking at print books. And so I get to the third line of the book and my head's off on some random
Yeah.
stream of consciousness someplace. My eyes keep going. I turn pages. I haven't absorbed a word. But the audiobook keeps me engaged. So
That's great. I think that's
yeah,
why I love podcasts so much. I honestly think
yes,
that social media has destroyed my attention span,
yeah,
because we're so used to these little nuggets of information that I'll get
yeah.
15 pages in and I'm like, where was I?
Where was I?
Yeah,
I never had it to begin with. There's some level of
yeah,
ADHD there. I've never had it, but
yeah,
yeah, the audiobooks they stick. I
yeah.
learn something from it. I can go back and listen again if I really tune out. But yeah, yeah,
So where do you find community? You mentioned community and support. You mentioned that you've used therapy in the past.
yeah.
You mentioned your partner's supportive.
Mhm.
Where do you rely on for support outside of those two things?
So despite moving to Missouri, I've still maintained a strong friend group in Virginia, and there's a poker game I go to here, and guys I've been playing with for it's now 25 years. That group of guys, there's only so deep you're going to go into a poker game, right? So there's some of that there, but I found other men like myself. So Clubhouse was a good way to find men's groups, guys that
Yeah,
wanted to discuss similar things, right? So there's a group we met there where a number of us, stay in touch on WhatsApp, conversations periodically. But also in the workplace, I've started to find other people that sort of share similar values, right? So there's always someone there that I can just have a quick tag with during the day and go,
yeah.
hey, hey, like let's catch up on things, right? Or let's go out, have some dinner after work and catch up on things. So for me, I take advantage of who's in my space, right? Working, the job I do and being on the social media app, that's where I'm looking for those connections. But I guess the bar, the caliber of what I'm looking for in terms of how I want to elevate myself, that's who I'm trying to gravitate to.
So what does male friendship look like in your life? And it's one of those things that I've struggled with having deeper male friendships in my life.
Yeah.
I've got, I think, good friends, and I think I've gotten deeper friendships of late. But it's how does the idea of male friendship play
I
out in
have
your life?
I have two categories. Category one, and I mentioned the poker game. It's the people that have known me all the way through this journey, right?
Mm,
You knew me as a high schooler or in college. You went through that first marriage with me. You went through the trauma and drama afterward. You're still in my life to this day. So that poker game's won. My fantasy football league's been running longer than
mm,
that. That's now 30 years old, right? So it's all these guys. So those people will always check you. They knew you win, right?
yeah,
They saw that you can't pull the wool over those guys' eyes and say, this is who I am, because they go, BS. Like, don't pull that crap here. We know you. We see you. You still have this going on. So that's sort of group one, the one that knew you when they really know the true guts. Group number two for me are really, people that I'm meeting along the path, and this is where I say that sort of higher bar. I'm trying to find people I can have real conversation with
mm,
like this. I'm trying to find people, and I just met one guy for dinner an hour ago, a former coworker of mine I've known 20 years, but we sat down and just started to talk, and he just tell me about what you're working on, and just we really went deep with each other and what life's been like. We now have
that's
kids in
great.
college, and like if you can't have that level of conversation with, like, I don't go to Super Bowl parties, right? I'm an Eagles fan. We won the Super Bowl. Life was great. I didn't go because every time I go to a party like that, what are you doing? It's guys staring at a screen, shoulder to shoulder, grunting and looking at the play, but no one will look each other in the eyes. Nobody
Yeah,
will talk about anything real in their life. So to me, male friendship has to close that emotional barrier, that emotional connection of, you want to really know who I am as a human being. You want to get to know who I am. You want to share real information with me and help build each other up, help support each other. And you're doing that because you're the right kind of person now, or you're the guy that knew me when, so I can go back and go, what am I doing wrong here? Like,
Yeah.
and they'll go, oh, you're not being true to yourself. Is really what it comes back as. It's just a different.
That's that's interesting the way you kind of bucketed those.
Mhm.
I don't really have men in my life that knew me prior to like 10 years ago. Like I don't
Okay.
really have any friends that um there's a few, a handful of family
Yeah.
members and maybe one or two like human beings that could
Sure.
tell you my entire story arc. And it's but I see the advantage of that a lot. And
I'm not saying it's easy to keep
yeah,
them,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
this, these are guys I see Labor Day Sunday every year in one dude's basement that
yeah,
still hosts this draft.
right.
And if it wasn't
Yeah.
for that, I don't know, right?
Yeah, the thing you were describing about like watching football with guys,
Yeah.
a previous guest on this podcast, he talked about the idea of that men triangulate
Mhm.
and there will be two guys and then the object of their attention, and that's what they're connecting over.
Is a third thing,
The
right?
third thing,
Yeah.
right? There has to be a triangle. They can't just
They
directly
can't
connect.
focus on
Yeah,
each other.
yeah, exactly. And
True.
when he said that, I'm like, oh, that just explains everything.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a so
Yeah,
to your point, this poker game, right? The host Tom, he and I had our first sons on the same day, right? We were coworkers, both had that sort of miracle of life fatherhood moment
yeah,
at the same time on the same day, different hospitals, right? But it was one thing we bonded over. And one of the games before the holidays, I said, hey, how's your boy doing? He's upset with me, blah blah blah. And I go, I could tell like he really wanted to talk about it, right?
yeah,
Some of the other guys at that table were not really into that depth of a conversation at that point in time, but Tom had something to say. So I'm like, all right, we're going to connect later, right? Because
yeah,
obviously these guys want that triangulation on the cards and on the
yeah,
chips, and
yeah,
not on what's going on.
yeah, yeah,
And that's
exactly.
sad. That's sad to me. Like he
It
wanted to
is.
say
Yeah,
something, right? But
yeah. There's a vulnerability that exists in
there it
in
is.
a group like that that a lot of guys just aren't comfortable with. Uh,
No, that's right.
let's switch.
Wrong mix.
Let's switch into our lightning round,
Okay, cool. Yeah,
where I'm going to ask you 11 questions, kind of
nice.
quick answers. Might dive a little deeper into some of them,
Mhm.
but let's jump right in. What are your top three values?
Honesty, authenticity, and integrity. And a lot of people don't know how to differentiate those words, but to me, they're all different and they all mean something specific. So those are the three.
Okay. Who is one role model you've had in your life?
My uncle, my mother's brother, who was there a lot for me as a kid, even though I wasn't his kid, showed up to everything, encouraged me, held me accountable.
Who do you hope you are a role model for?
More or less anyone I come into contact with, but specifically my son and stepson, my 22-year-old son, uh, figuring out manhood, and my stepson who's now 15, showing them what a real man can actually be.
What's one way you make the world a better place for others?
Listening to understand. There are very few people I won't have a conversation with about what's on their heart. I feel like that's the most important thing you can do for somebody.
I'm going to dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
How do you manage that? Like, how do you, if you're always there for others, how does that work in your life? And so it doesn't become something that sort of flips and ends up being a negative for you.
Well, actually, one of the skills I picked up in my job, where I do a lot of, bringing people together, strategic vision, architecting, and design, is facilitation, right? So I've learned how to manage difficult emotional conversations and hold space without owning that emotion. That takes practice, right?
Mm,
To
yeah.
to be part of it, to facilitate it, to really not make it about yourself, right? Because I think one thing that people struggle with in any kind of conversation like that is it'll trigger something within you, and all of a sudden you're dealing with your own issue while they're trying to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
It's you have to learn what's theirs and what's yours and to hold that space separately. So for me, being able to see and recognize this person has something they need to talk about, like my friend at the poker game, but being ready to just listen, being ready to just hold that and go, I don't have to solve this for you, but I want you to at least let it out.
As I go through these podcast episodes, I'm making a list of skills that I think are going to be superpowers in the future. Number one from a previous episode was nuance. I've just identified number two, and that's facilitation skills.
Thank you. Yes,
Like,
no, that's an honor.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Um, so,
Yeah.
what's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. It's shaking that negative perception of the American heterosexual older white man. I mentioned that one men's group. They joke around with me. Most of these guys in that men's group are people of color, men of color, and they're European. And so they like to refer to me as the colonizer in this group. And so it's
Yeah.
they mean it in good humor, but that's
Yeah.
there's threads of truth in there. You go, all right, haha, guys, got it. But it's not internalizing that identity. It's believing that I don't have to live that stereotype, but it's really it's the walking on eggshells whenever I'm around other types of people to make sure I'm not mansplaining, to make sure I'm not um, you know understanding things from only my perspective. It's listening to understand their
I appreciate the analogy of the eggshells because I feel that a lot. Even though I feel like my heart and mind are in the right place, it can be really hard to navigate.
how are you perceived
Yeah.
is more important than how you see it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm hyper aware of how I'm perceived,
Yeah.
for better or for worse.
What's your favorite emotion?
Anger.
Why?
Not for myself. I like when other people feel angry. I know when I feel angry, and I also know that it's stigmatized, right? Men aren't allowed to be angry. If we're angry, we're scary, right? But a man that knows how to be angry, a man that knows I'm just feeling I've got to let something out right now. I know how to do it in a healthy way, and I've got to let it burn off. It's really just masks sadness with a lot more energy is really what anger is,
Hmm.
right? You're you're just something didn't go your way. You had an outcome that wasn't what you expected. There's a sadness there, but for men it normally trips as anger first, right?
Hmm.
If you're a healthy person that knows that dark side, you can handle the anger, right? And I'll tell my wife, I'm going to be irritated about something. You need to let me be for like 10 minutes. I'll be good. It's
Yeah.
like I'm just going to be mad about this, and that's got to be okay, right?
Yeah.
So
It's okay to be angry.
mhm,
It's unhealthy
mhm.
when you hang on to it.
Correct. You
Right.
have to feel it. You have to manage it. You have to let it out. It's healthy to go through that whole process, and we have to teach men that's okay.
Yeah.
So I embrace it when it happens.
What's your least favorite emotion?
Boredom. I
Mm.
cannot stand to it was boredom. Boredom to me means stagnation, right? If I'm bored, I'm not creative. I'm not thinking about what it is that I could go do with my time, with my energy. I'm not in a creative place. If I'm bored, I'm probably all the way down at that what's not well with me physically, right? Because I'm not creative. So that boredom to me is a trigger that there's something I have to go dig into. And that's where I'm sort of like, "Ugh, all right, what is it? What's stagnating me right now? Because I've got to go figure out why I'm stuck."
I think a lot of people equate relaxation and boredom.
Oh no, they're two different
They're
things.
two very different things. And like
uh, I can relax.
yeah, I don't relax well at all. And it's something that like relaxation bores me.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, that's the
yeah,
relaxation for 12 minutes is good, right? Take the rest,
yeah,
clear your head, now get back into something else.
yeah,
But now, if
exactly.
I'm doing the somebody said to me today, channel surfing is the new or was the old doom scrolling, right? The original doom scrolling
Yes,
was searching through the guide on the
yeah.
TV trying to find a show. If I find myself doing that, just turn the TV off, leave the house, go get outside.
What brings you the most joy in life?
It's a tie. And because they're in two different time zones, I'm going to say I can use both. Date nights with my wife are honestly for me right up there. Just having that time where I know it's just she and I, we can connect with each other, we can enjoy each other's company. Equally, it's visiting my kids in school. It's seeing
Hmm.
them, at their colleges in their native environment. They're all in the Eastern time zone. My wife's in the Central. So, I'm going to go see my one of my daughters on Thursday, right down in her element, down at her school, doing what she's happy to do, and just seeing them who they're becoming as people.
Yeah,
Um, it's one thing when they're your kids and they're younger and you have these thoughts or ideas of who they might be. To actually see who they're becoming as their own adult independently is so joyful. Just I can't even put that into words.
I'm with you right there. My son is 22. He's a senior
Yeah,
here. He's a senior at Illinois, and he's a musical performer.
awesome.
And when I see him on stage, it's like utter
Yeah,
joy because he has
yes,
found his thing.
and you get to
Yeah.
witness it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's such a
Um,
beautiful thing.
one thing that here's and maybe you'll relate to this, and sorry to derail this a little bit, but my son used to my 22-year-old son when he was a teenager used to swim, and he was really competitive in the breaststroke regionally, and one day he just decided to stop, and he didn't tell me. And so like
Mm,
I thought he was just going to keep going, I'm like, what do you mean you're done? Like he goes, I'm getting too old for this kind of. And I go, but you needed to tell me that. Like I'm not going to get to see his work. So one of the best gifts anyone ever gave me, the summer swim team in the neighborhood that I used to manage, the new coach of that said, "Hey, I convinced your son, who was a lifeguard at the time, I convinced him to swim in the time trials. I can't guarantee he's going to want to stick around to the team, but he's swimming on Saturday at 8:30. You need to be at this pool if you want to see him swim." It
yeah.
was the last time I got to
Awesome.
see him swim. That kid, it was an individual medley. He got to the third stroke of four. I broke down in tears. I just
Yeah.
because you just know, like
Yeah.
this brought him so much joy for so many years. He's tired of it now, but this is me getting the closure on it, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you got that for yourself. So
that's
he probably enjoyed it too.
yeah. To
Yeah.
any of the dads listening to this, by the way, like make sure you like know how your kids feel about their sports, because one day might be the last time, and you don't know when it's coming. So I got a
Yeah.
gift. I got a gift.
Yeah. My son was in scouts from like Cub Scouts all the way up
Yeah,
through high school.
yeah,
And I loved being a part of that. Like we
yeah.
connected over it. We were out in the outdoors, and then one day he just came to me, and we had just done one of the big Boy Scout high adventure trips. It was like
Hmm.
a like a 12-day, 85-mile backpacking trip, like one of these life-changing moments. We came home from that, and he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm done." I'm like, "What?" So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like I needed to know this.
yeah, yeah.
All
So,
right.
um,
Yep.
what makes you most proud of yourself?
Actually, when I accomplish a task, so I mentioned earlier the ADHD thing. When I actually complete a task without getting distracted onto something else,
Hmm,
that's got to be it. Like it's checking something off the to-do list. I'm a
fantastic.
Virgo, where we have the reputation of being, methodical organizers, checklist types. Actually, checking the box
Hmm.
it's a little thing, but there it is.
Getting things done. Where can you feel the most yourself?
All right. So I mentioned I was a Philly kid, right? I'm a Philly sports fan. Love us or hate us. Um,
Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to celebrate it like right now.
Yeah,
But no, seriously, in the stadium with my crowd, right? I actually wrote a poem about it at one point to a friend that like I had gone to a Phillies game. It was a rain delay, right? It was one of those things where all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, was a
yeah,
downpour. We all like withdrew back into the concourse, and I just found one of those like pillars to lean against. Crowds walking by, everybody's soaking wet. It's a humid day. It's
yeah.
disgusting. But I caught myself just like zooming out a little bit and just listening to the conversations of the people and the kids and the
Hmm.
dads and that unique accent they have, and the just the wild unbridled Philly enthusiasm. And I felt like, I don't know anybody else in this place, but I know them all at some level. Like
Yeah.
there's a certain feeling of home that I only get at a Philly sports event. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I can be myself, and it's okay.
There's something uniquely human
Yeah,
about big events like that.
yeah,
Like bringing people together like that around a
mhm,
common thing. It's
yeah,
it I know a lot of people don't get it. Like, and a lot of people are not sports fans, some people aren't like big,
yeah,
music festival fans, whatever. There's something about that experience that is
yeah.
so like it's uplifting. It's energizing.
It's a parochial community kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And in Philly, what I think I could tell you is there's a familial thing to it, right? You're rooting for a team because dad did. You're rooting for that because granddad did, right? Your uncles are there, your cousins are like, that's your tribe,
Yeah.
right? And those are the warriors on the field fighting for the tribe, right? So you're all sort of rallying around
Yeah.
this, right? There's that feeling to it. So
Yeah, I grew up on the eastern side of New York City, so
okay,
I won't hold the Philly thing against you,
let's go Mets.
or show you the Yankee hoodie I'm wearing right now.
Oh no, oh no.
So yeah,
No, the Yankees always had their number. It's all right.
yeah, yeah. Okay, one final question to
Mhm.
wrap up our conversation today. What's the one thing you hope people take away from this conversation?
If you're a guy, it's okay to cry, right? Find the one dude.
Mm,
Seriously, find the one dude you can talk to and just be
yeah.
yourself with. And anything you feel shame about, dig into it. That's it. Learn yourself.
Thank you, Bobby. This has been a
Thank you.
fantastic conversation.
No, this is
I
great.
feel like we
Yeah,
could go on for hours,
we could have.
but no,
Thanks.
nobody wants to listen to anybody for more than an hour. So,
100%.
but thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed
Thank
getting
you.
to know you, and thanks for being persistent and wanting to be on the show.
This was my honor and pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Take care.
I end all of these by saying, keep up the hard work.
Doing my best, sir. You too. I
Okay.
appreciate the show and everything it stands for.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.